now the middle of March and we're driving onto the farm of Michael Mellett in Shrule in County Mayo. Over the past 5 years, Michael has significantly improved his animal performance and ultimately his bottom line by getting cattle out to grass early. However, before we go and talk to Michael, we're going to look at some of the key aspects of grassland management. One of the reasons we produce beef is to make profit, is to make money. You want to make money out of the job. One of the key areas of making profit out of beef production is grassland management. It costs around €2 a kilo to produce a kilo of live weight gain from meal indoors, compared to 20 to 25 cents a kilo to produce a kilo of live weight gain from grass. Therefore, it's quite simple. The more live weight gain you can get on the animal from grass as opposed to meal and silage indoors, the higher your profit. In order to achieve a satisfactory level of gain at grass, it is important that you get your winter feeding regime right. You want animals going back to grass fit, but not fat. For cattle that are going back to grass, meals should be front loaded, with meal feeding ceasing 6 to 8 weeks prior to turnout. To achieve your target of 0.3 to 0.4 kilos of live weight gain per day whilst indoors, weanlings and stores should be fed 1 to 2 kgs of meal per day, depending on silage quality. I suppose, Michael, if we start back to the start, when would these cattle have been housed?
They were housed the last week of October, first week of November. All cattle are housed by the first week of November.
And when they did come in, Michael, what were you feeding them?
When they came in first, they were put on 2 kgs of meal plus silage. And for about 60 days, and from roughly mid-January on, they were silage only from then on.
So you really feed no meal for the last 6 to 8 weeks before going back to grass?
No meal for 6 to 8 weeks going back to grass.
And in terms of the ration that you were feeding, Michael, what's the protein content?
The protein was 12% protein.
Right. And your silage quality, was it fairly good?
It'd be 70 DMD.
So you had good quality silage.
Fairly good quality silage.
And your key goal there, Michael, is to have them growy as opposed to fat? Or,
just to grow them, not put on too much condition. And they're taken off, from about mid-January, they're taken off meal and they're on silage only for the rest of the time.
So they're on silage basically from around 6 to 8 weeks?
6 to 8 weeks before they go to grass, yeah.
So, given turn out the green light, when do you know to let stock out? I can never understand a lot of you farmers. The big problem I have is getting you to house stock, and then when you get them housed, it's letting them back out. It does take a lot of courage to let cattle out to grass in early March, but when you have the facts and you have the information, a lot of the risk can be taken out of it. There's 2 things you need to know before letting cattle out to grass. Firstly, how much grass you have on the farm, and secondly, how much grass you're going to require. Firstly, we're going to deal with identifying how much grass you've actually got in the farm. And while a lot of people shy away from that, that's a simple, very simple process. It's just a matter of getting out there, walking the land and trying to identify the average height of the sward in each field. And basically that can either be done using a device like this, which is a grass plate meter, which basically simply measures the height of the grass in the farm, or alternatively, and to coin a phrase, this is one I made earlier. This is simply a brush shaft, an old brush shaft. It is notched up along with a saw, and the measurements in centimetres are wrote along it here. And what you basically do is you walk across the field, you look at the height, how far the grass comes up. Now don't take the tip of the grass, basically look where the bulk of the sward is, how far it comes up the brush. You walk the field, you take about 10 to 15 samples depending on the size of the field, and you're basically trying to determine the average height of the grass. When you have the average height of the grass recorded, record in your notepad the field number, the area of the field, what size the field is, where it's 1 hectare, 2 hectares, and the average height of the grass. And then when you go back into the kitchen table, you can sit down and calculate how much grass is in that field and how long it's going to do your cattle for. It's important whenever you're taking your measurements that they're representative of the actual amount of grass in the field. So stay away from areas such as water troughs, gateways, along hedges. We've established in this field that the average grass height is around 10 centimetres, so that is recorded in our notepad. We then move on to the next field and subsequently the rest of the fields in the farm to build up a profile of the amount of grass in the total farm. So we've been around the farm here, Michael's farm now, and we've identified that his average grass height is around 10 centimetres. Now from our chart we can see that 10 centimetres of grass equates to around 1280 kgs of dry matter per the hectare. Don't worry about the figure dry matter. A lot of farmers get confused and switch off when you talk about dry matter. It's a figure. Don't worry about anything else. So basically what we've established is Michael has between 12 and 1300, 1.3, 1.2 tonnes of grass per the hectare on his farm. Now, we found out he has 36 hectares for grazing. So simply what you do is you multiply your 1.2, 1.3 by 36, which gives you around 45 tonnes or 45,000 kilos of grass on the entire farm. You do exactly the same for your farm. Identify the grass height, use your chart to identify what that equates to per hectare, and then multiply it by the number of hectares that you have for grazing. You have to build in a utilisation figure, and that will change throughout the year. In good dry weather and lush grass, your utilisation figure will be around 80%. That means of that 45,000 kilos available, 80% of it will be actually available for the cattle to consume. But as we can tell, the weather here, and especially at early turnout with a lot of heavy rain in the evenings or in showers, utilisation figure will drop. So to be on the safe side at this time of year, I would take a utilisation figure of around 60%, especially when there's heavy showers forecasted. Basically what we're doing then, we multiply the 45,000 by 0.6 to actually tell us how much, that's your 60%. Michael has basically 27,000 kilos or 27 tonnes of grass available. Like when you're looking at grass, simply work out the same. It's a similar principle to feeding meal. If you're feeding 10 kilos a day and you're feeding 100 cattle, that's a tonne a day. 100 tonnes will do you 100 tonnes will do you 100 days. It's exactly the same principles with grass. So what we've worked out is Michael has 27 tonnes. Now we need to go and work out how much he needs and how long that's going to last him. It's using this form here. Basically, you're looking at how much grass each category of stock will require. Obviously, a 400 kilo weaning isn't going to require as much grass as a 600 kilo. A suckler cow with a young calf isn't going to require as much grass as a suckler cow with an older calf. And what you're looking at here from a store animal point of view, a 300 kilo store animal will require about 6 kgs of dry matter of grass per day. A 400 kilo one will require 8, a 500 kilo one will require 10, and a 600 kilo one will require 12. You're looking at, as a rough rule of thumb, 2% of the body weight. So 2% of 600 kilos is 12. 2% of 400 kilos is 8, and that's how you calculate it. So you divide your cattle into categories, you put in the number you have, you multiply it by how much each one requires per day, and that gives you how much grass that each group requires. If we use Michael's a very straightforward example. He has about 102 cattle going out to grass, averaging 600 kilos, so therefore they're going to require 12 kilos of dry matter per day. So 600 kilos, 102 cattle times 12, and if I just get my calculator, is Michael's daily grass requirement is about 1,224 kgs per day. So remember, we worked out that he has 27,000 kilos. So the next simple step is 27,000. Divide that by our daily requirement of 1,224, and that gives us 22. Now what that 22 figure represents is the number of grazing days you have ahead. Now basically, when Michael grazes off one field, it'll be 22 days before he comes back and he requires it again. Now ideally at this time of year, you'd be looking for 28 to 30 grazing days ahead because growth is slow, utilisation can vary. So Michael just hasn't enough grass at the minute to turn out all the stock. When grass growth picks up in April, May and June, you'll be looking at around 12 to 14 grazing days ahead. And again, when it slows down, then again September, October, you'll be looking back at going